the roundup today, dog attack alarm in East Gippsland, data centre concerns in Hume, an admission that a controversial roundabout should never have been built, funding wins for 5 regional New South Wales councils, compensation calls for sacked Ipswich councillors rejected, industrial action launched against a Tasmanian council, a long-serving South Australian council CEO to step down, a Port Hedland councillor pushing back against government intervention, and jail for a UK council worker convicted of fraud. Hello, I'm Chris Eddy. This is your go-to podcast for news from and about local government across Australia and beyond. It's the Local Government News Roundup, the edition for Friday the 29th of August, brought to you by the Victorian Local Governance Association, the national broadcaster on all things local government. Heading today's Victorian Roundup, East Gippsland Shire Council has sounded the alarm over a disturbing increase in dog attacks, with more than 13 incidents reported since early July. The attacks have resulted in injuries requiring hospital treatment, harm to other animals and, in some tragic cases, the death of beloved pets. The council says most incidents occur when dogs escape from their owners' properties or when they're allowed to roam off-leash in public areas. It's reminding residents that dogs must be leashed in all parks and reserves across East Gippsland, particularly near paths, playgrounds and waterways. Council officers are now conducting regular patrols and warning that owners of unleashed or aggressive dogs could face significant fines. Hume City Council is developing a framework to manage the environmental impact of data centres after 7 water applications in its municipality were made to Yarra Valley Water that could consume significant water resources. ABC News reported that the data centres need large amounts of water for cooling, with one application near Mickleham approved to use enough water annually to supply 66,000 residents. The council has raised concerns about the planning process and the conflict between data centre development and housing needs, calling for greater state government oversight. The Victorian Government has approved a controversial development in Riddles Creek that will add 1,360 homes and approximately 3,800 new residents, effectively doubling the size of the township. Macedon Ranges Shire Council and local residents oppose the plan, arguing that it fails to respect the area's semi-rural character and lacks sufficient infrastructure improvements. Despite the objections, the government has proceeded with minimal changes to the original proposal, citing the need to boost housing supply while promising a new community centre, recreation reserve upgrades and affordable housing options. Corangamite Shire Council has approved a 40% rebate on this year's rates and municipal charges for drought-affected farmers, funded by a $5.27 million allocation from the state government's drought support package. The uniform rebate applies to all properties with a farm rate classification and aims to provide cash flow relief for agricultural businesses struggling after years of drought conditions, despite recent superficial improvements in pasture appearance. Horsham and Ararat rural city councils are intensifying lobbying efforts to pressure state and federal governments for further funding to complete the Western Highway duplication, a project delayed since 2018. They're among a group of councils supporting a motion to the MAV State Council meeting in October, urging immediate resumption of the Western Highway duplication project between Bangor and Ararat. Despite being Australia's 3rd busiest interstate freight route, only 38% of the 408-kilometre highway to the South Australian border has been duplicated since works began in 1972. The councils say recent accidents highlight the urgent need for completion. Moyne Shire Council is bringing forward 5 motions at the upcoming MAV State Council meeting, addressing issues including early years infrastructure, road funding, volunteerism and renewable energy benefits. The motions advocate for a more equitable approach to funding rural councils with extensive road networks and infrastructure needs, rather than population-based formulas that disadvantage rural areas. Kingston Council is challenging the suburban rail loops plans for Sir William Fry Reserve, arguing that the proposed replacement open space doesn't adequately compensate for areas lost to the new station and future development. The council has made a submission requesting several improvements, including a playground upgrade and a regional level skate park. Mayor Georgina Oxley said a greater level of investment was required to ensure the reserve was able to serve the thousands of new residents and visitors that SRL will add add to the area. And Wyndham City is strengthening its international connections with a September delegation to China, fully funded by a $20,000 grant from Sister Cities Australia. Representatives will visit Changzhou and Shanghai to explore opportunities in education, enterprise, innovation and tourism. The visit aims to foster collaboration with Changzhou, a major Chinese city of 5.3 million people, located in Victoria's sister state of Jiangsu Province. In other news in brief, the former GM of Edward River Council has rejoined the senior executive ranks in Victorian local government. Phil Stone, who left Edward River in early 2024, is joining Mildura Rural City Council and will be in charge of the strategy and growth portfolio. Mr Stone previously held second-level roles at Latrobe and South Gippsland councils. The City of Ballarat is partnering with Ballarat Community Health and Royal South Street Society on a new anti-vaping campaign targeting young performers. The theme is Own Your Dreams, Not the Vape, and it aims to address rising vaping rates among young Australians, particularly young women, and highlighting how vaping can damage performers' ability to sing, dance or play at their best. And Moyne Shire Council has renewed its tourism commitment, signing a 3-year MOU with Great Ocean Road Regional Tourism, partnering with 4 other councils to strengthen the visitor economy. The strategic partnership will support sustainable tourism growth across the region, which currently welcomes over 370,000 visitors annually. Much more news for you from around the country coming up in just a moment. But first, a message from our principal sponsor, the Victorian Local Governance Association. They tell me places are filling fast for the Mayoral Leadership Program, which is coming up on Friday the 28th of November in Melbourne. You need to book now to secure your place for this program, which is in its second year, designed to equip mayors and deputy mayors with the knowledge they need to lead their council effectively and with good governance at their foundation. The full-day program covers the roles and responsibilities of a mayor, the mayor-CEO relationship, how to chair a council meeting, managing difficult conversations, dispute resolution and effective communications, and media training. It directly aligns with the state government's mandatory professional development requirements for mayors and deputy mayors. This training must be completed by the 31st of December. You can find out more or book your place by heading to the VLGA website, vlga.org.au, or give a member of the team a call to discuss it further. The VLGA Mayoral Leadership Program coming up on Friday, the 28th of November at the Monash Conference Centre in Melbourne. Now for our New South Wales report, and Liverpool City Council's CEO has admitted that a controversial diamond-shaped roundabout, which cost nearly $140,000 to build and remove, should never have been constructed in the first place. The Sydney Morning Herald reported on heated discussions at the council's meeting this week about the so-called diamondabout, which confused drivers and was painted over just 8 days after installation. Jason Breton acknowledged the process was unsatisfactory and promised that lessons had been learned. Muswellbrook Shire Council has appealed to the federal government for urgent reform after the Dartbrook mine collapse left local businesses owed more than $5 million and workers without entitlements. Mayor Jeff Drayton said the situation highlights how billion-dollar corporations can evade responsibilities while small businesses face bankruptcy, and Australian taxpayers cover workers' entitlements through the Fair Entitlements Guarantee. The council is engaging directly with Dartbrook's administrators, receivers and managers, as well as making representations to stakeholders. Meanwhile, the council has reportedly voted to pursue a special rate variation application with IPART to address the anticipated loss of approximately 25% of its rate base due to the upcoming mine closures. Power FM reported the council is wanting to ensure mining companies pay a fairer share while protecting residents and local businesses from increased rate burdens. Consultation on the proposal will begin next month, with potential implementation in the 26-27 financial year if approved. Leeton Shire Council's eagerly anticipated financial sustainability report has been tabled, revealing long-term financial sustainability concerns despite no immediate liquidity issues. It finds that projected budget deficits pose serious risks to the general fund. The council is establishing a Financial Sustainability Advisory Committee to examine findings and pursue recommendations tailored to Leeton Shire's unique circumstances. The Shire is one of 5 regional New South Wales councils among recipients to share in $16.3 million in funding from the New South Wales Sustainable Communities program, designed to counteract impacts of water buybacks in the Southern Basin. The council will receive more than $2 million to complete Stage 2 of the Roxy Theatre upgrade and to establish the Roxy Institute of Performing Arts. Murray River Council will receive over $1 million for CBD redevelopment in Moama, while $3 million will go to Griffith for CBD and local tourism improvements. Balranald and Carrathool Shires will also receive funds for various infrastructure upgrade projects. Development application assessment timeframes have been slashed at Georges River Council. The St George and Sutherland Shire leader reported this week that figures show 46% of applications were determined within a 115-day assessment period required by the Planning Minister, up from 12% in March. The average number of days to assess applications has fallen from an average of 209 days to 128. And Lismore City Council is waiving developer contributions for secondary dwellings until June 2027 as part of its affordable and diverse housing incentives policy. The move will potentially save residents thousands of dollars when building granny flats in urban areas. The waiver can be combined with the $15,000 housing grant program for eligible applicants. The council is hoping its policy will stimulate housing options that are in demand but not being delivered by the market. More New South Wales news in brief. Kiama Council has received $200,000 from the state government to develop a nighttime economy strategy and trial a special entertainment precinct in the CBD. It was a priority in the council's state government advocacy plan. Armidale Regional Council has partnered with Homes New South Wales to explore housing development at 2 sites, including the former Duval High School, with potential for up to 150 new homes, featuring a mix of social, affordable and private housing. And the Office of Local Government is seeking feedback on draft procurement guidelines for New South Wales councils to replace outdated tendering guidelines and provide best practice principles for council procurement activities. Additionally, OLG is inviting expressions of interest from procurement professionals to join a working group that will contribute to the guidelines and develop supplementary guidance materials to address various procurement topics and risks. This is The Roundup, your go-to source for local government news from around Australia. As we move on to Queensland, the government and the opposition there have rejected calls for an apology and compensation for Ipswich councillors who were sacked following a Crime and Corruption Commission investigation in 2018. The motion for compensation was passed at a local Labor Party policy conference, despite objections from current Ipswich Mayor Teresa Harding, who called it backward thinking and not focused on the community. ABC News reported that both current political leaders dismissed the issue, with opposition leader Stephen Miles calling it water under the bridge and Premier David Crisafulli confirming the matter wasn't on the government's radar. The city of Moreton Bay has spent over $1.4 million in the past year enforcing its controversial homelessness policies, according to a council report released this week. ABC News reported that the bulk of the funds, some $855,000, went to wages for rangers and health officers, with an additional $232,000 paid to contractors for camp demolitions. The council also spent $175,000 on police protection for staff, citing 226 near-miss assault incidents involving homeless individuals last year. The enforcement measures come as the council prepares to defend its anti-camping laws in the Supreme Court in November, following a challenge by Basic Rights Queensland. And Redland City Council has commissioned a top-tier external review of its operations to identify efficiencies and cost savings in the face of financial pressures to fund major infrastructure projects. The Courier Mail reported that the review, likely to be conducted by a major accounting or consultancy firm, will examine everything from service delivery to staffing levels. Council leadership insists that any staff reductions would only occur through natural attrition or redeployment. In news out of Tasmania today, the Australian Services Union has launched industrial action against Derwent Valley Council, including work stoppages and service disruptions, according to New Norfolk News. It comes as the union and council are in dispute over wages, with the union demanding a 4.5% increase, while the council has offered 2.5%. The council's general manager, Ron Sanderson, maintains the offer is reasonable given the current inflation rate of 1.4%. In South Australia, former Adelaide City Councillor Carmel Noon will make her return to Town Hall after winning a seat in the Central Ward by-election. That election was called after the District Court ruled the 2022 result was affected by illegal practices. The Adelaide Advertiser reported on the results of the poll. It said Ms Noon was the first candidate to reach the quota. She'll be joined by three other successful candidates: Patrick Marr, a public service employee who campaigned for the city's entertainment culture; Alfredo Cabada, an entrepreneur and the only successful candidate affiliated with a political party; and urban planner Eleanor Freeman. Notable candidates who missed out include former Deputy Mayor David Elliott and outspoken former councillor Anne Moran, who had served 27 years in local government. The Lord Mayor of Adelaide, Jane Lomax-Smith, welcomed the incoming councillors, noting they bring a valuable mix of urban planning, business and community advocacy experience to the chamber. Light Regional Council CEO Richard Dodson is leaving after more than 15 years of service, during which he oversaw township renewals, championed rural road sealing and secured millions in grant funding. The council will begin recruiting for a new CEO, with an interim CEO to be appointed before Mr Dodson's departure on September 26. And the South Australian Local Government Boundaries Commission recommendation we told you about in a recent episode to transfer 5 areas from neighbouring councils to Gawler has been estimated to bring the council an additional $3.3 million in annual rates revenue. That's initially, but the figure could soar to $45 million once a planned 10,000 home Concordia development is completed. That's in Barossa Council's territory, and the recommendations would see that move into Gawler. Barossa Council Mayor Michael Bim Lang has expressed strong disappointment with the recommendations. He said his council has invested nearly 2 decades of planning around the Concordia project. He told Adelaide Now that after investing all of those resources, the Commission document chops us off at the legs. The final decision rests with the Minister for Local Government, who can accept, modify or reject the Commission's recommendations. And to Western Australia, where we're waiting to see what the local government minister will do with regard to Port Hedland. Indications are that commissioners will be installed and the council dismissed. But in the interim, one of the 4 remaining Town of Port Hedland councillors has launched a petition calling on the minister to allow the council to hold a special meeting with a reduced quorum to pass its annual budget. Councillor Adrian McRae, a councillor since March last year, quoted a relevant section of the Local Government Act that would allow the minister to take such an action. He's also requested that the council be allowed to enter caretaker mode until elections in October. The council's August 27 meeting has been postponed with no date provided. The council also announced that the government had declined a request for it to operate with a reduction of quorum. At the time of recording, Councillor McRae's petition had 1,029 verified signatures. And the city of Subiaco is pushing back against what it calls a headline-grabbing approach following a state audit into council spending practices. Perth Now reported that Subiaco was one of 6 Perth Metropolitan Councils examined by the Auditor-General, with the investigation revealing a combined $4.5 million in credit and store card spending across those councils, while Auditor-General Caroline Spencer said there was no misuse of public funds found. She questioned whether some purchases aligned with community expectations during the current cost of living crisis. These included expenses for wine, oysters, champagne and a dinner with elected members costing over $1,000. Subiaco's CEO Colin Cameron has defended the council's spending practices, noting they were among the lowest spenders in the audit at just under $200,000 for the year, and that the city has strong controls in place with only 2 credit cards in use. Let's clear some more news with an extra news briefs feature. Sunshine Coast Council has received more than 2,500 submissions to inform the development of a draft dog exercise area regional plan. The feedback is being thoroughly reviewed to improve the draft plan, which will be presented to the council later this year. Robert Randall has been declared elected to Tumby Bay District Council. He was the only remaining unsuccessful candidate from a supplementary election for councillor in May. The appointment follows the resignation of Ross Hudson from the council earlier this month. And Glenorchy City Council in Tasmania says it's making significant progress in tackling climate change, cutting emissions through solar power, waste reduction and cleaner transport. Mayor Sue Hickey said that council and community are proving local action can make a real impact, saving on energy costs, diverting organic material from landfill and transitioning 20% of its light vehicle fleet to hybrid or fully electric vehicles. Thanks for downloading the Local Government News Roundup. This is our end of week edition. I'll have some global stories for you in just a moment, but I just wanted to take a second to acknowledge and thank all of you who have been listening to the program in increasing numbers over the years. We're coming up towards 5 years of the podcast. It started in March of 2021. And our subscribers can go all the way back and be nostalgic and listen to all of those old episodes. If you'd like to know how to become a subscriber, and there's no obligation to do so, there's some details on our website and in your podcast player. I'm always interested to hear from you about where you are and what you find useful from the podcast. I was contacted this week by Linda. Linda tells me she started listening to the podcast in Italy earlier this year, has now returned home to Melbourne, and is listening on a regular basis to keep up to date with all things local government. Terrific. Thank you for reaching out, Linda. Always great to hear from our listeners. If you'd like to get in touch, let me know where you're listening from and perhaps what you value about the podcast, or to give us comments or feedback on particular episodes. There's a few ways you can do that. You can use the send a text button in your podcast player. Just keep in mind I have no way of replying to those, but they do come through to me. You can email at lgweeklynews@gmail.com, or you can engage with the Roundup on LinkedIn or Facebook. Now for some global report stories before we wrap up the week, starting as we usually do in the UK. The Reform UK leadership at Nottinghamshire County Council has taken the extraordinary step of banning all 41 of its councillors from engaging with the Nottingham Post newspaper and its online edition. The Guardian reported that the ban, implemented by Council leader Mick Barton, extends to a team of BBC-funded local democracy reporters managed by the newspaper. The editor of the Nottingham Post said the decision came after the publication of a story examining plans for local government restructuring. She described the move as a massive attack on local democracy. The Lib Dems have written to Reform leader Nigel Farage demanding intervention, while Labor MPs have also condemned the decision. The BBC reports that a 66-year-old man has been sentenced to 3 years in jail for fraudulently working 4 simultaneous council jobs, earning £236,000 by submitting false timesheets and failing to disclose his multiple employments. Bryn Howes claimed that he completed all required work and that his actions were motivated by a desire to support understaffed local councils, but the judge determined his behaviour was deliberately dishonest, stating he'd made hay while the sun shined, knowing the councils weren't checking on him. The case was prosecuted by Tewkesbury Borough Council, which said he wouldn't have been appointed if they knew about his plans to retain employment with South Gloucestershire Council and a firm providing services to 3 other district councils. To the US, in Washington state, Everett City Council has approved new civil penalties for graffiti violations that will work alongside existing criminal charges. The changes will allow police to issue fines with a lower burden of proof and provide diversion opportunities, according to a report from HeraldNet. The new measures include $250 fines per violation, plus restitution costs, with amendments giving judges more discretion and making parents of 16 to 17-year-olds liable for costs. In Vancouver, Canada, after a year-long investigation, the city's Integrity Commissioner, Lisa Southern, has determined that Mayor Ken Sim and his party's councillors violated the city's code of conduct by conducting council business behind closed doors. CBC News reported that the investigation found the group who held a majority on council coordinated amendments to motions in private group chats before public meetings. Commissioner Southern said the actions deprived the public of participation in policy development, writing in her report that democracy is undermined. Mayor Sim strongly disagrees with the findings. He said caucusing is a normal and accepted practice at every level of Canadian democracy and is not misconduct. It will be up to the council itself to determine any sanctions. And from New Zealand, Grey District Council has faced criticism after councillors were seen laughing at a meeting when asked about pushback on recent rate increases. One News reported that the incident prompted apologies from both the mayor and a councillor. The council implemented an average 13% rate increase, with some residents reportedly facing increases closer to 30%. In response to the growing anger over rising rates, a ratepayers group has been established, highlighting the broader challenge of funding local government without continuously increasing the financial burden on residents. And so another week of the Local Government News Roundup comes to a close. This was edition number 484, recorded on the morning of Friday the 29th of August 2025. The Roundup is brought to you by the Victorian Local Governance Association, the national broadcaster on all things local government. Look out for a new episode of VLGA Connect coming your way this weekend. If you have comments or feedback about the Roundup, you can send an email to lgweeklynews@gmail.com. And there's more details, including story links for this episode, at lgnewsroundup.com. The Local Government News Roundup is recorded in the city of Greater Geelong, Victoria, on the land of the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation. I'll be back with more on Monday. Until then, thanks for listening, and bye for now. The VLGA is offering a special councillor professional development intensive series. Partner with 3 other councils and save more than 50% off the minimum cost of completing all 13 modules in Year 1. The intensives will be held over 3 days. They're cost-effective, time-efficient and promote the benefits of peer-to-peer and face-to-face learning. In addition to the intensives and in recognition that every council has different needs, the VLGA also offers bespoke training options, both online and in person. A faculty of facilitators will work with you to customise a program that responds directly to the unique professional development needs of your council. To find out more, head to www.vlga.org.au.